listeners, Harika here, and I'm super excited to welcome you to UppTalk. If you're ready to learn and get your hands work wonders in the world of information technology, then you're in the right place. When I say UppTalk, we are not just another edtech company. Consider we are your learning partner committed to unlocking your full potential. Whether you're stepping into the world of technology for the first time or looking to advance your career, we provide top-tier, hands-on courses to build up your career. Let's take our first step towards learning here and explore it.
With all active employees, I should be able to return the actual data that I wanted to have. With straightforward, you can choose all active employees and go for active employees. But we also have multiple similar data sources. Or workers. This is also one kind of data source which looks for all the status. It looks for active employees, it looks for terminated, it looks for contractors, it looks for people who are on leave, it looks for retirees. All these are worker only. Retirees would be worker, would have got retired. And terminated employees is a worker. And people who was on leave, who is on leave, went on leave for long leave, for paternity or paternity. He is also an employee. We will be getting all those employee types in all workers. But here now you wanted to have only active employees. When you choose this kind of data sources, you need to do a kind of filtering at report level. You will be filtering at report level and return the data that you wanted to have. Similarly, we also have all active terminated. This returns active and terminated employees, and you can do a filter for active employees. In such cases, you need to know when you are working with all workers. You need to understand that it not only returns worker who is active, but it also returns contractors. It also returns terminated. It also returns part-time, full-time. It also returns people who went on leave and also looks for retirees also. When you are actually dealing with the benefit related reports, benefits, you will be sending all the demographic information to benefit vendors. In such cases, they will be expecting reports related to all the employee groups. Retirees would have got a benefit plan and active employees would have got. Contractors will not have. All the employee types will be having the benefit plans. In such cases, if you are only looking for active employees and if they miss any kind of retirees in the report, again probably need to send a kind of supplement file that includes only retirees. In order to avoid that, probably you can choose all workers or all active employees in any other case and do a kind of filtering option when you have specific report needs. But when your report requirement is only looking for active employees and there is no kind of any other information needed but just an active employees. And in such case, you can consider all active employees. But the only difference here you see is when I actually go for all active and terminated, you can see the primary business object is worker. And when I go for all workers, this is also primary business, object is worker. When I go for this is an employee business object. Both worker and employers are same. You will be getting active employees, but only thing is employee will not have contingent worker information. Employee will not have any other contacts or retiree information. This business object will not hold that information. When I say employee, just a kind of employee. It will only look for employee who is currently in the organization. People who went on leave, people who got terminated, people who got retired. All this kind of information this business object will not be looking for. When I say employee who is active, employee is nothing but who is active. It will look for only active employees. And worker, if you say worker, there are multiple categories in worker. Worker may be contingent worker, worker may be part-time worker, fixed-term worker, and worker might be retiree who would have worked as a worker and got retired and terminated worker. All these categories will be coming under worker. Though this sounds a little similar, when you actually work on a report, you get all the required data in both ways. But there is a huge difference when you actually think in a little bit grounded way. Both employee data source that is sitting under employee business object data source that is sitting under worker business object have the similar data. But when you look for extra information in employee business object for contractors, for retirees, you will be not able to pull that information. In such cases, you need to know your actual requirement, what works best, and in which way you need to actually meet the reporting requirements as per external system requirements, as well as your internal business requirements. Now let me go with all workers because I wanted to give multiple examples with the same data source for you. I have taken all workers or I can go with terminated. I will go with the data source. These are mostly used data source in Workday. Now I have standard data source with the primary business worker. I'll go ahead and add all the demographic information. Then I'll give multiple use cases in filtering the data, in actually adding the prompts along. I'll give a couple of use cases which will be beneficial for you in understanding. Is not an employee, but before becoming employee candidate, where we have a candidate from that source. It is actually pulling the legally, which for now, in this case, we don't want it to pull from external or internal candidate. We want it to pull from worker business object because we're actually looking for active employee information, right? Employee is nothing but a worker. We wanted to look for worker source. where you will be rolling up and your immediate managers. Immediate manager would be level 1 and manager's manager would be level 2. And from here you can actually go for top level hierarchy. Immediate manager is level 1, manager's manager would be level 2 and manager's manager would be level 3. Like that, you can actually build on your management level. By choosing your management level 3, we have around 9 to 10 delivered fields. But in case if you wanted to have you know where you are, I know delivered fields are not needing to actually drill down into further levels of management levels. Whatever you know delivered fields that are not surprising your needs, you can actually take calculated fields. Probably we will be discussing the right after reporting concept. You can build calculated fields to actually add further management levels. Actually, country and total compensation. You can add some personal information. Remember here, since I've added personal information here, which is mobile number and the phone, sorry home email address, which is kind of in a personal data. When you're running a report, you should be getting all this data till here, till its compensation. You should be getting all this data. But you will not be getting mobile phone and emailing home email address. You will not be getting. That sits under a kind of different object, personal data. And in order to return the personal data, you need to have access to that particular domain, access to that particular area, which actually gives permissions to view personal information. Though you are able to add the personal information related fields in a report. But in order to get the data, you need to have the specific permissions to view the personal information. Or else, if there are no permissions for you to view the personal information of an employee, you will be seeing blank rows populating when you don't have access to that particular field. Just make sure when you're actually running any report, when you see that some blank rows are populating. And if you're assuming that there's a data issue, could be data issue, but could also be security issue, where you can actually have your investigation. Start with the security and also data prospect. Now I've given a kind of basic data, and when I run a report, I should be able to get the data. Before I run a report, we have mobile number. I was able to get mobile number for all of the employee and none for employee in home email. This might be this employee 2001 does not have a personal email entered in Workday, or I might be not having relevant access to view personal email address for an employee. Both chances can be possible. In that scenario, you need to first look for any kind of, if it is a data issue, See if that email address can be added or if no data is there in the system. But your report is not polling means that your security is making a problem. Now I have a report created. Now in the same report, as my initial requirement was to have active employees, there are multiple ways to filter the data. One is through delivered fields. One is through calculated fields that you can add under your primary business object, where report is sitting in, and add that to filter and filter in many areas. Now, since I wanted to have the report to be pulled up with only active employees, it should not include any other categories. In this scenario, what I can do is there is a delivered Boolean value called the active status, which you can take. Active status. There is a Boolean value to our false condition, which actually looks for active status of the employee. Whenever you add any Boolean value in the report filter, it is not like a direct field, I can say. For that, we will be getting some checkbox here. When you check this checkbox, it means that you are filtering your active employees into this report. When you are unchecking this one other than active, whatever it may be terminated or only if anything might be coming. This is how we know in the action filtering, and if you filter for this thing, it will run for only active employees when you run the report. Here you can see when I'm running the report, I have run test option. A test is nothing but which actually tests your data and returns first 10 rows of the file. If I run this, it will not look for complete data, but it looks for any issues on the first 10 rows and return you the first 10 rows of the data when you run in a test mode. But when you run in actual, without test mode, you should be getting complete data from the Workday. We have around 8v1 rows of data who are of active employees. Now, since I've added a filter with active employee is going to be in value, I've checked and marked it as an active employee. I was able to get active employee. Now let me uncheck that one and add one field called active status in the report that we will get to know whether both are matching or not. What is that I wanted to add? Now what I'm doing actually, I'm checking the checkbox, which will return other than active employees. I'm checking the checkbox. If I run this, it will not give me active employees, but it will give me who are inactive, might be terminated, might be who went. Only you might speak to me. You must be getting such kind of data as an output. Amit, can you repeat the system please? Where is this active field that I've added here? In the end, Now, if you see here, everything is blank here. Since I made a report to return all other than active employees who might be terminated, who might be inactive by getting on leave or not. Since I'm seeing as blank, I don't see any active employees in the file. But let me again change the status of the report. I'll again explain this one. I have added the actual Boolean value in the report. When I say Boolean value, what does it return? It returns yes or no, right? True or false condition. It returns 0 or 1. Such kind of negative and positive value, it will be returning in Workday. All the Boolean values will return. Yes, when the condition is satisfying, it will be returning. Yes. When it is not satisfying, it will return a blank. When you see the blank, it means that the condition is not getting satisfied. Now I've added that field as a column in the report. And when I went to the report filter, I have active status field equal to unchecked. When it is unchecked, this is nothing but not an active employee, right? Now let me select this one and run a report. We will see how it works. You can see yes is operating because I filtered with active employees. That is the reason why I'm getting all yes. But now, when I think that I don't want to have active employees other than active might be terminated, might be inactive, any status yet, we will have such kind of a problem. Just uncheck that checkbox and make your report to return the data accordingly. Which will look for inactive employees for not active in our organization. That's how you typically play with filters. Now let me give me a scenario. Let me give you a kind of scenario here. Little logical thing. If you understood, if you are a good logical person, you should be able to remove this filter. Now I have a report ready which is actually pulling all active employees. Now I wanted to filter the report data which actually should return employees who has got hired on or after 2021. First of January 2021, who has got hired in the system from United States. I wanted to have the report filter that should look all the employees from United States and their hire date should be on or after 1st of January 2021. In similar way, another filter I wanted to have in the same report. Now I'm giving a kind of filter which should return all the employees who have joined on or after 1st January 2021 from United States. And I also wanted to have employees who have joined in all other locations, other United States, on or after 2022 January. Two conditions I have. One is from US, hire date should be on or after 1st of January 2021. And second condition is hired from all other countries other than US. Hire date should be on or after 1 2022. How you will actually think logically. considering your query experience or any kind of analytic experience that you have in order to have these two conditions. How you will actually filter in order to return the data. If you are understanding, filters will be very simple. This is the one at most you can think of what I'm actually asking. But if you are understanding this, I think you can play around with any kind of reporting requirements by filtering even with complex requirements. Amit, we can use higher date to filter higher data than less than. Give me complete condition. For learning days, yes, higher date after on or after 1/1/2021. The other one is other than US on or after 1/1/2022. Greater than 2021 and our country should be US. Two filters we will use. Two filter. What about next? One will be on hire date and one will be on location. What would be the next? These are the two questions, right? Who got hired on after 2021? No, I will ask about two conditions. One is on or after 1/2021. Country should be United States. The other one on or after 2022. Country should be anything other than US. It will be combination of your hire date and now it will be a condition and it is not equal to United States. Location of this country is not equal to United States with an end condition, right? Hire date greater than equal to 1/1/2022 and with an unconditional location. Address country is not equal to United States. Amit, can we do an or and combine the filters? You can see what I'm doing and compare your understanding and see whether it is making sense or not. And remove this one, or if I can keep also no issues. This will be filter for active employees. Now my requirement is hire date should be greater than or equal to AMIT. What is the significance of this comparison type column? Comparison type, which actually specifies whether you are selecting values on the condition that you are actually chosen. Comparison type. Let's say now you are selecting active status. Your comparison type specifies whether it is true or not when it is a Boolean value. Now when I go for, I think this filter, entire filter conditions gives you clarity here. Just bear a minute with me. That will give you clarity. Now what was I was trying to do? Hire date right. Hire date. What would be the next row? What would be the next row? Location, address, country. Country. Location, address, country would be the right field. I think I just in the selection list. I will talk about this option also. But I think you will be understanding when I choose the other condition. What I need to choose here. United States. And now the second one should be non-ES with a different hire date. Now I do not want, I want both cases right. I do not want to have one, should actually look for other. I wanted to have both conditions to be satisfied and should return the right values. Since I wanted to have both, I will go for operator called R, which will look for from US greater than 1/1/2021, or it will look for from other than US whose hire date is greater than 1/1/2021. Like that, you can add multiple conditions, which actually your report will be looking as a kind of criteria and will look for the actual value while returning from the workday. Now, hire date. Amit, we are going to group the conditions right. Since we are applying the multiple conditions over here, now tell me whether this is making sense or not. Hire date greater than 1/1/2021 and location equal to United States, or hire data than 1/1/2022 where location is not equal to United States. Amit, quick question. If you go on the left hand side you are, means having these both the condition of location address in the selection list, United States of America, and last and condition. Won't there be a conflict? Sorry. Come again. I mean, won't there be a conflict because in one condition we are using an AND operator and we specifying the value as United States. In the another condition we are saying it's not equal to United States. I'm just thinking, do you foresee a conflict here? Conflict of conditions. Are you using the brackets here? Got it. Now it's clear. Now these two will be treated as separate conditions. And it will actually return from both locations executing the criteria. Will this make sense? Now with brackets, it does make sense. Now coming to comparison, types and operators we use. In the selection list, we shall be actually looking for the values that you have selected the field. When you have selected any field, when you are choosing in the selection list, that will drill down into the field and pick up the values that are there in that one, where you should be able to give United States of America. And when you select not in the selection, it is completely opposite. It will not look for the value that you specify here when you select, not in the selection list. Other than what you select here, it will look for all other values than what you selected here. That is a kind of determination of not in the selection list. And coming to values specified in the filter. Basically what you are choosing here: location, address, country. Now, value specified in this filter is nothing but which gives the actual value for the field that you are taking here. It actually gives the comparison value without which you cannot actually have your filter completed. It actually looks for a value that you have that you are specifying in the filter. That is the only thing difference between in the selection list, not in the selection list, and value specified in the filter. But when you are actually looking, when you do not want it to have values that are not looking from this filter, you can also choose value from another field. There will be a value from another field where you will not be getting all the country information alone. You need to choose any other field other than the country. In that way, you can actually select all other values other than country you will be getting, which does not make sense actually. If you are actually making location address, country definitely has to be a value, should be a country. If you are getting value from another field might be when you are dealing with a huge amount of calculated fields. There you might be expecting some value which actually looks for country as well as from country as well as different values. Such kind of things you may be adding. But for this kind of scenario, what you are adding here in the selection list, value from the specified filter gives United States of America is actually a kind of actual filter that you can use. But in other scenario, you cannot add one calculated field with Boolean value where country is equal to United States of America and might be adding United States of America benefit plan is equal to this one that will return from America who are eligible for that particular plan. Such kind of condition, you can add that value from. Take another field and add that value here which you will be getting through calculated fields. When you have such kind of things, when your report is too complex of dealing with the multiple data values, it can be going in that way. But now our requirement is actually looking for the value that we have specified here. There is a reason why I wanted to choose the value that we are looking for. Amit, I have a question. When you had the fields like location, address, country, state also, and you take an operator in the selection list, does it necessarily mean that all these fields have unique tables at the back of the Workday? Right. Only then you can use the selection list option. If you dig here location, address, country, it's actually related business object is country, which actually gets all the values from country. Primary is worker. Got. If you do the same with the hire date also. The same information is the hire date. It's just from worker. Business object is empty. No related business object is empty because it's a dynamic field. Yes, actually. But it actually looks for date type of field, right? Date type of field actually looks for related worker business object which actually related to the specific object of worker. It is not related to any other object, right? There is a reason why you see related object as empty, but when you look at the other field, you should be able to relate to any other business object. No, what I mean to say is that when you think about a hire date not having a business object around, a hire date would allow a user to specify hire date ranging from could be any date between the infinite timelines. Whereas, let's say if you have, in the case of country, there is a business object at the back of the workday where the table for the country is being set up, which means that tomorrow, if I want to, let's say, for example, if I want to select Kenya here, it will not allow me because Kenya has not been set up at the back end in the country business object. Whereas in the hire date, it's very dynamic. You can't specify the hire date range or you can't create a business object. The learning here is that all the fees that are configured at the back of the workday, where they have a tables, they will have a business object and then we can use a selection list option. That is what I was referring, right? For hire date, you cannot relate it to any other object because it is independent of worker. Exactly. I'm kind of clarified because it's a new atmosphere for me. I'm kind of clearing out any questions if I have. I also have one question of it, maybe slightly different from what we are seeing here, but I want you to run the query. I look for the result, then I'll ask. I have 266 rows at a time. When I look for United States, what should be the hire date? It should be on or after 2021, right? The hire date is on or after 2021. And when I filter for all other countries other than US, it should be on or after 2022. The hire date is on or after 2022. That's how you can play around with multiple filter options in which way that we wanted to help. Now, yes, you said you have another question, right? The question is, and maybe what you can mark it for now, maybe at some point of time. The touch point is just wanting to make sure that it doesn't skip my mind. The question is, I'm sure that you are aware of this long data set versus wide data sets, right? What is it? Long data set. Long data set versus wide data set. For example, if we talk about a candidate recruitment events starting from the time the person applied to the time the person got hired, there are various steps the person has gone through. Now, what will happen? When you extract the candidate data set, you will find one candidate with multiple records. Question number one, how can we create a report that can show the latest stage of an interview without duplication of the record? That's number one. Number two, how do we transpose this data, that this information that I'm getting in 5 different row items can be? I get in one line item with all those candidates. Stages are arranged in columns instead of rows. That's a wide data set. Instead of 5 different line items, I will have only one line item for each of the candidates. That's question number 2. Number 3 is for any kind of an event change. For example, a person compensation change. Something is road changes. is job code changes. If I want to see that, how to get that information that when the change has happened and what is the latest information that belongs to maybe not. Let's skip this question. Maybe I want to know what all changes has happened to a worker on various things. 3 questions essentially. These are actually generally used requirements actually. Whenever you're sending the recurring file to any of the external system. And the first run in a first file when you're sending it would be a complete full file. Then after that all the changes file, delta file you'll be sending, which should only look for all the changes that happened in the employee profile, which is a kind of general agenda scenario that we have in the day. And probably there are multiple ways of reporting with this kind of requirements. One is through building a huge logic in the background of the report through calculated field. Let's say today I have hired. Today I have hired and during hiring I've changed my personal information. I've changed. My compensation got incorrect and my compensation has got corrected. The compensation has got changed. And tomorrow I might be moving to another role. My organization might have got changed. My cost center might have got changed. And after 1 month, HR will be doing some backdated transactions, moving me to the same organization where I was sitting in. Effective date, specifying the backdated one not as on date, but giving a kind of backdated one. H. R will be making a transaction. Now, to report all these things, you need to have certain kind of logics. Because HR has performed transaction, backdated one, not a kind of as of date. Your logic should identify the backdated transaction. Your logic should identify the current day transaction. Whatever in the cost centers, who is your organization, promotion, salary changes, and all your logic should also detect all these kind of changes. Whenever you get such kind of requirements, there are 2 ways. One is if you wanted to actually whenever you have such kind of delta, actually returning the changes and all. There are 2 ways of reporting. If you wanted to go with worker business object, which actually which looks for all the changes and returns the last transaction of change. It will be looking for when you go for worker. Completely basic on the logic that you will be writing in a filter and calculated fields. In the filter, you will be playing around with huge logic and you will be building that to actually look for backdated changes, resigns, and feature dated transactions. Anything that is going with employee profile, when you are going with worker business object that might work. But there is a kind of one. You find a data source called all business process transactions. There is a source called business process transactions which actually looks for. You need to select the transaction that you wanted to have, whether it is terminated, organization, movement or promotion, job change, location, address, anything, contact address change. There are certain events that we have in Workday. Based on that event, your report will be returning the data. Business process. Transaction is a kind of data source which will look for all the transactions based on your report filter that you have given and returns you the data. These are completely data trained specific. Whenever you use such kind of data sources, you must specify between what data range that you wanted to have the output with the change information. Such kind of things you need to specify while you run the data and accordingly your report will be returning there. Probably I will create one other report once we are done with all the filtering options and all. I will take one example of one of your case and try to give you one report design that actually gets all the transactions happening with employee profile. What was the business object you talked about? What was the name of business process transactions? Business process transactions, all business process transactions which actually sits in action event. Action event is a business object. Source should be all business process transaction and object should be your action event. And you can also do from worker business object also. The source itself is returning all the changes. It is easy for you. No need of any kind of calculations, huge logics that you need to build from source itself. You can get whatever you wanted to have. But if you wanted to have in a single row, this business process transaction will give all the changes. It will give based on the data that you have selected. If you have 5 or 6 changes, it will give all the 6 change information. But if you wanted to have the stack flow last change that you wanted to have, you do not need to get all the changes. But it has to look for all the changes and give you the last stack. In that case, you go for worker business object. In the behind, you will be writing a lot of filtering with a huge logic. You need to write that one. Got it? Now, Amit, just once again we take a pause just to ask the team if they have any questions or any scenarios they want to touch upon. That is the Paya Priyanka Lalita. That is good. That is the Paya Priyanka. Yes, I know. We can move on. Any question? No questions. I think everybody has given a thumbs up. Now we have done something on filter. Let's look about Ram. Filters and prompts are actually both related. But only thing is when you're choosing your type as web service enabled and when you're choosing your report as non web service enabled. That actually matters here. Now let's look something about prompts. I'll be taking out all these prompts, that all these filters, that I can give you clear examples of prompts. Whenever you create any report based on any business requirement, and the report is just for business usage, not for any kind of external data population. The external business wanted to view headcount information or any kind of change information or any kind of address information. If they wanted to review, you'll be creating one demographic information and we will be giving them. Suppose if you wanted to have, instead of running the full file, instead of giving a kind of full information to the business, might be giving a kind of flexibility to the user. What employee that they wanted to look for. Let's say they're looking for any kind of highlighted information when this employee has got hired. Instead of running a full file, and from the full file identifying an employee is a kind of a little time taking job. In order to give a kind of flexibility to your business, just enter whatever employee that you are looking for. I'll give you the data that you're requiring. Kind of the prompt will prompt me in that way actually. Whenever you plan to give any report to the business, you're able to hear me right. I'm audible. Whenever you are building any report to business, whenever someone asks you to build a report which actually used for their purpose, not for any, sending external file to external vendor or not. Just you have created them. Create a report for them and ask them, to review the file whenever they wanted to, given access to them. When you have such kind of business needs, giving a kind of flexibility to the business user, giving a prompt, mostly used prompt that we give for all the business reports is supervisor organization and attaching subordinate organization to the supervisor organization. This is the mostly used prompt that we'll be giving, but in exceptional cases, any special cases will be giving as per business requirement, whether they wanted to prompt data. Prompt is nothing but just a filter. A filter will be, doing in the background, and prompt will be giving a kind of option to actually select the data. That's the only difference. Now let me do one kind of small filter for you. The prompt for you and how we can attach, how we can associate. How we can associate your prompt and filter will be simple. Let me remove all these things. Simple filter, Let's say if you wanted to filter the data with employee as a prompt. Now, my report is not a web service enabled report. I have not enabled this report as a web service enabled just to get an advanced report without any kind of web service enabled option. Now I wanted to have my report to be filtered by employee. There are two ways. You know that you need to actually decide when you're actually giving the prompt to your report. You can see here prompt user for the value. Most of the people want me to think is, this is once I say, this is a kind of relevant prompt, is the only option available for taking prompts, and they can just select this one. And when you set this option, it's mandate that you wanted to use the prompt. But there is also one more option. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, prompt user for the value and prompt the user for the value and ignore the filter condition if the value is blank. Even if you don't give the value in prompt, this case will be executed. If you give the value, it will be actually looking for that particular record. But if you don't give, it will actually run forever, in fact. In this case, prompt the user for the value. You definitely have to give the value when you are running the report. Let's try both the cases. Now, since I have selected prompt user for the value, I need to give the data. If I click on, I will be getting a blank. When you prompt the user for the value, you definitely have to give the value and then only your output will be returned. Now the same scenario. If I take the other case that I was explaining, ignore the value when the value is blank kind of option that I was telling you. When you take that kind of prompt option, listen, I am talking about prompt. You should have got question. Amit, you are talking about prompt, but you are doing something in filter, but you are not doing anything in prompt. You should have asked me a question. I would talk about it. Now I am selecting this option. Now we will see the difference to when I run a report. And the meaning of the other option that I have selected is even when it is blank, it should run. I am not giving anything. It will look for all the values and it will run. When you will not give prompt, when you select the prompt option, it will run for everyone. But when you give, you only look for the specific prompt item and you will be back. That is the basic difference that you need to know when you are actually taking the prompt options for your prompt requirements. And now coming to the filter versus prompt. Any questions here till now? Any questions or anything unclear? Amit, I have one question. When on the front end, when you show the prompt for employee on the front end, I wanted to know we get a drop down for certain list. And is there a way to understand those drop downs or edit those drop downs? Let me run it. These drop downs. Is there a way to edit those drop downs? Or we give these are actually the since you have taken as an employee as a prompt right. This will actually give multiple sources of picking an employee. You can, what all the sources that you can pick. You can pick from all employees you know, from the source, and from location hierarchy. You can pick the employee from location. Also, you can pick the employee. This is actually not skimming your data. From supervisor organization, you can choose a manager of the supervisor organization and choose an employee. When you are in something, you're not able to identify the employee. And through these options, you can see where this employee is currently sitting and pick that employee. You don't know the name of the employee, but you know where this employee is reporting to. Who is the supervisory manager for this one? When you know such kind of information, these options will be helpful for you to filter the data during the prompt. These are the delivered options which actually comes with the employee as a prompt option. These things, you cannot edit them. These are actually a kind of in the background. These are actually configured, which enables you to select the right option when you want it, to prompt it. It is nothing, but whatever you see regularly. Supervisor organization's location, if you wanted to actually employ by location, if you wanted to, what do you want to do with it here? If you wanted to edit location, You can have location hierarchy and location as a kind of objects, right? Word and edit if you wanted to make any changes to the location or if you wanted to make changes to employee, you can actually do that from employee profile, right? If any such kind of requirements are there for you to edit these options, but what is the specific use case that you want to edit these options? The thing is, if we are saying the prompt as employee, we only want to give prompt as employee name and not these options because it tends to happen at the user end perspective. They tend to get confused employee by location. They go ahead and start drilling down and it gives huge big list. You know, that happens when we give the prompt and it is not with only one field. For whatever fields we are using, there are multiple selections we get and causes confusion. I got when you're actually trying to employ. You don't want to have any of these options in which make confusion for the user. It should be only employee names. In that scenario, this delivered field, we are actually picking up the delivered field, right? In the filter, we have given a kind of delivered field called employee. In that scenario, what we can do is we can actually create a calculated field under employee or worker, then use that one format text kind of thing. You will be actually creating one calculated field and use that calculated field as a function, which is not a kind of delivered field. Now, when you are actually converting a delivered field to a calculated field, you're tweaking the data. That tweaked data you can actually use as a prompt, and then you will not be seeing any of these options. But no chance from backend. We can, have this employee as employee ID only and not attached to any other variants. No, there is no backend, right? Everything will be performing in a single application. There's backend kind of configuration that we can make. I'm saying from business objects. This is coming from business objects, right? We cannot edit business object also no. We cannot edit business object, we cannot edit data sources and all. Those are actually, that's a kind of small limitation, I can say. There is a control, but only people who are developers working with Workday. They have access to edit business object. They have access to edit data sources and all but not, customers. Resources like us have an option to edit, something that Workday has provided. We don't have that kind of control option in Workday as not given to its customers. But yes, if you wanted to actually, overcome this kind of situations, there is an option through calculated field that you can do. Got it? Thank you. Any other questions anyone have? Now, I was trying to give you another example of prompting. Most, I think. I just wanted to check all the reports that you guys will be creating or, have whatever that are there in the system. Any idea that any of your reports are web service enabled report? Anything attached to integration or nothing? No report that you are actually dealing or that exists in the system that you are actually monitoring are web service enabled reports. Any? Because based on that, I probably know the option that I was actually trying to give. You will help actually. Web service would help, but we do have some reports which are web service enabled for R4 Prism and for dashboards as well. We use the feature. Oh, then I think probably I need to talk about other way of filtering or prompting option. Now, I have not made my report as a web service enabled. Let me make my report as a web service enabled. I am making the report as a web service enabled. Now let me do a prompting. Now I already have a prompt. It should actually restrict to proceed further now. You see, I have got an error. The system is not allowing me. Now when I go with unchecking this, I should be able to proceed further. Now we need to understand the difference here. When you are making your report as a web service enabled reports, your prompt should be associated. Your filter prompts should be associated with actual prompts in the report. And when your report is not a web service enabled report, your filter prompt will suffice for prompting your data. But when your report is a web service enabled report, your filter, whatever you are giving here, should actually sync with prompts that is actually coming here. Then only your report will be accepted and will allow you to proceed further. Without giving any kind of prompt where your report as a web service enabled report, your system will not allow you. In this case, when I made my report as a web service enabled report and called the prompt option that I have configured and filtered into the prompt, then I was able to proceed further. Before that, I was not able to. When your report or web service enabled report, make sure that your prompt is added at prompts. When it is not a web service enabled report, it is fine that you can actually make your prompting options at filter level only. That is one thing when you are actually working on a huge data requirements, and Prism would be a kind of good example. And any kind of integrations that you are associating to your custom report while sending the data. That is also kind of a good example which you can refer that all web service enabled report should be attached to the prompt calling the filter prompts. That is the basic thing that you need to know. I know, I think most of them are aware of this, but just giving you the kind of insights that gives clarity on the flow that we are going. That is about prompt. Now you said you have advanced reports and you know might be Prism, might also be your reports might be attached to integrations, which will be actually sending a file to any of your business. There are multiple ways of integrating files. One is through email, one is through FTP, one is through, any kind of HTTPS protocol and all. We call it technically. I do not want to get into all those details now. If you wanted to actually integrate data files to business users or any kind of external system users, there are multiple ways that you can do. If it is an internal system, you can actually send a file from the report only. You can do a kind of data interface from report itself. If business are asking you, hey, I wanted to have every week, Monday morning 10 a.m., I wanted to have the file sitting in my inbox. When such kind of request your business is making no need of thinking like creating an integration, making integration to send an email of the output file to business user. Sending email of the confidential information of report output is not recommended, but still it is up to organization requirement. But we have a flexibility of sending output file within the report. Rather than creating integration and giving a kind of, configuring all the email attribute option integration, other than doing all those things, we just have a report created and have this report scheduled and share the schedule to one of the business users, which will actually send the output file as per the scheduled time that you have made, which we are going to see now. when you are actually making your report as a kind of run option. You can see here schedule option. Click on the schedule option. When you wanted to send the file up front now, or if you wanted to schedule this for every custom requirement every week or every month or every 1 hour, you know that you wanted to share this file. You can actually select as how you want it to have. For now, I'm just selecting now. Now, when you're actually selecting this, you have an option based on the prompt that you have sent in your report. Now there are options to share your output file. Share the output file to other users, which will send the file to the user after it completes running. Now authorized user should be, I don't want to give anything because I've selected the option without ignore this blank right. It should be returning for all the employees. Now, if you click on report, since I've shared the output to Lohan McNeil, she should have got notification. She would be getting a notification once this completes, actually. When the process gets complete, Lohan should be getting the output. Typically share most of the any kind of reporting output requirement business wanted to have. He should be actually sharing this file with the business user that automatically every runtime that you would have given, it will actually run that and send the file to business users. Now this is completed. Now since we are seeing this, it is completed. Now let's go to Lohan McNeil and see whether there is sitting in her notification or not. You can see the output file. Loha McNeil has got the notification and she can actually open the file and review the output file. This can be possible to any of the business user who is internally in your Workday system. You cannot send to any other system who is outside of Workday. For that kind of requirements, you can build your integration and send in a defined format. But for just a kind of internal business users, your reporting schedule can send a file to business user and it can be scheduled every week, every month, and as per the schedule requirement that you have, it can actually schedule as needed. Most of the business user, you can define prompts as per their requirements and schedule. This you know as required and accordingly send the file as needed to. Your internal users or any of other expectations that you have on a scheduled jobs, you can get it fulfilled through report schedule options. Any other questions anyone have? I can take some more time if you guys have another 10 to 15 minutes if you guys have. Since I was out for a few minutes, I wanted to take your interest if I can extend for another 10 to 15 minutes if you're. Well, let's talk about something on your clear on scheduling reports. Any questions on report schedules? Whenever one question I have here. When you actually have your report that you have not shared to anyone, let's say one of the business user or one of any kind of team from recruiting or team from any other teams, It kind of a lot of requests. I can say they've asked you to actually, share a report that they can have access to run the report. But they don't have permissions to view the data. Let's say recruiting. Let's take example again. If you will be getting a lot of requests from the recruiting team, and for some reason they wanted to view all the employee information, all the employee information, their contact information, and all that they wanted to view. And unknowingly, without any kind of prior permissions, you have given access to that recruiter. Recruiter, will be able to run a report because you have given access to them. You have shared a report to recruiter, and it shouldn't be done actually, but you have given without any kind of permissions or approval. You have shared your report to a recruiter. Now when recruiter, assuming that the recruiter will have all the access, recruiter will be running the report. Now based on the security that recruiter will be having, generally based on role, only security will be assigned, right? A recruiter will be having all the recruited related permissions, will not have anything related to personal information or employee information. Recruiter will not have. So you actually share your report to your recruiter. When your recruiter runs the report, all the data will be populated like employee ID will be populated to the recruiter. Because it is a global field for all the users, it will be populated. And other demographic information can be populated. But information like contact address or contact information or any other sensitive information like compensation, performance reviews are all your recruiter will not be able to view because the security is restricted at recruiter role level where they will have access to all the recruiting related stuff but not anything related to employee. When you unknowingly share this information, still even recruiter will not be able to view that information. Now, in other case, when you actually schedule a report to recruiter to the person who you have shared right and other option, I am saying is when you schedule a report to that particular recruiter. The recruiter does not have permissions, they will be getting all the data because your scheduled report will be giving you output file. It will not give you access to the report. When you schedule your report or recruiter, it will send you all the information. Though that recruiter is not intended to view all the information, your scheduling report file will give you the complete information irrespective of security that recruiter has. That recruiter can view all the information from the output file. There is a difference here. When you have shared a report to recruiter was not able to identify any personal information or contact information of employee because of security. But when you have shared your report output to recruiter, output file was able to go to recruiter and recruiter should be able to extract that and view all the information in the file which is actually a breach which shouldn't have happened. Recruiter is asking you all the job requisition information, all the position information. That's fine because it's their data they can view. But when recruiter asked you, I wanted to view employee contact information, I wanted to do employee, in performance reviews and all. It's nothing they can do with all this. It's not their job to view employee performance reviews, employee compensation information, employee personal information or not. That's why at tenant level, Workday restricts such kind of access though recruiter have report access. They will be not able to view that information because Workday has built in associated at role level. Security will be restricted. But when you are actually scheduling a report to recruiter, Workday will not have a control on that because you have to schedule and file will be delivered to your recruiter where they can have access to view all the information. This is one thing you need to keep your mind. Whenever you are sharing the file through a scheduled process, through a report, you need to know to whom you are sharing, whether it is authenticated to share or any confidential information that you are sharing, and just remove those columns. Before you share, and then share the file. According to me, you can take your way decision whether access to do it. Any questions here? And since we are talking about security, let me cover something on security as well. Now, Logan was not able to view the report that we have created earlier, right? Because earlier the report was created by some other person. And now, though Logan has all the promises to view the report, she is not able to find the report. The reason why is the person has created before proxying her. We have created a report, right? The user does not have. The user has not shared the report output. To not report output, I can say has not shared report to Logan. And there is a reason why Logan is not able to find the report. But she can actually access that. She can see the super user view custom report. Logan, since she is a super user, she has access to that report and grant her the security that she wanted to have to view this report output file. If we share all the dedicated users, Logan will be able to access this one. Whenever you actually create a report and instead of sharing the report to individual user, the best practice that you can follow is share your report to common security group that all the team members will be under. That every member will be having access to view the report and see, make some corrections when there is a kind of an RDoF request that you will be getting to make these changes. Share with authorized, just share with specific groups and authorized users. Go with this option. Share. If you are saying that you have a common security group, share your report to that particular common security group, which gives access to the report for all the users in your team. If you are going with a specific user, that is not a kind of harmful win, but it is a kind of complex thing. I can say my employee is getting terminated. When employee is getting terminated, employees will go off and account will get terminated. Now we have shared your output to this user and we did not actually remove when employee has got terminated. Now your report will be when you actually edit the report, and when you are trying to run a report, your report will throw an error. There is an issue with authorized users because you have used a person who is not in the organization. Please remove that person and run a report again. such kind of error message that you will be getting, that we make sure that when you are actually sharing your report to other user outside of the organization or within the organization as on when employee gets terminated, you need to remove that. In order to avoid such kind of manual intervention, the moment you create a report, next moment you can actually attach your report to integration system user, which will not need any kind of manual intervention when employee has got terminated or something, when you wanted to have a report to be running on schedule. When you make your report as a security group to own your report, and when you schedule that report, your security group will be actually performing the schedule. And even when the person who has created the report would have got terminated, there will be no impact with your custom report because you have made your report to actually owned by one of the system user, one of the integration system user that we can say called ICU, which would be having all the permissions to run the report, to view the output file, to schedule this thing. Everything will be having which you can actually construct when you are actually making security kind of discussions on a report. And also, the other thing that you need to know is when you are running a report, you need to have access to this data source. When you have access to data source, you should be able to view all the data. But when you do not have access to this thing, you will be seeing blank rows of data other than the default fields where the access is not required. But other than those default fields, you will be seeing blank data because you do not have access to this information at source level. That is the reason why you are restricted. And accordingly, you can actually see that the data source access that employee has. When you are actually sharing the output file, when you are actually giving access from a shared tab to other users, you should be able to take some information on the source level security that you need to maintain. That is one thing for the security part that you must be aware. And you guys will be creating any security users or it is out of your scope. Other team will be creating and you will be making that as a user. What is the architecture that you have? Will you be creating any ISUs? No, no. Then I think we will keep that. I thought of showing that and see attaching that report. Then I think that would be out of scope, which we can skip that run. Any questions, Fa? Any questions on report security prompting report filtering? If there are no questions, I think we should be good. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel. For more information, contact us sales@upptalk.com.